Hello, everyone. Of course, you know me, Dara Tomasson, life coach for quilters, and I am here with this beautiful Emily Tindall, and she's going to talk to us about who she is, what's happened to her over COVID, and how this whole year has really helped her in her business.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emily from Homemade Emily Jane. I actually have been quilting for a few years now and really got drawn into the quilting community through Instagram, actually, and made the leap last year, right when COVID started, to start designing and selling quilt patterns through my website. And
Mm.
so that brings me to the first quilt pattern I ever decided to start selling. It's called the Connector Quilt Pattern. And I made the decision actually right at the end of February. I had not written the pattern at all. I had not named it. It was just like this design that I had come up with just through playing with shapes. And then in March, I decided to start like redoing my website so that I could do the things that I needed to do to be able to successfully launch a quilt pattern shop. And
Mhm.
then, of course, the pandemic hit. And honestly, it was great for me to be at home and have so much more time to be able to devote to computer work and setting up my business to succeed.
Mhm.
So I look back and I'm so thankful for that time, for that season of life, because I spent a lot of time on the computer. I still do have a day job. I had a day job back then, and we went from working in an office to working at home in home offices. Um, but that brings me to May. I finally released the quilt pattern after having it with testers for quite a while and getting their feedback. And so I want to share with you
Yeah.
the connector quilt pattern. So this one has a design that has like these links in between the different blocks. And it was named because of how we connect each other together through the pandemic and everything changing and really needing to maintain social life and community, um, especially in the quilting world.
Mhm. Totally. I know the name is perfect because how has that been for you as, someone who used to go to an office and spend a lot of time socializing, with your like you're younger, have this husband and all of that, to now just being at home. Like, how are you finding your connections with other people, and how are they being more significant for you?
So it's definitely been different, but I don't view it as bad. I view it as different.
Yeah.
Being home more, my husband already worked from home before all of this happened. So it took some adjusting to get used to sharing
Yeah.
a space
Yeah.
and being together all the time. Luckily, we each have our own office, so we can close the door, have
Yeah.
some alone time in that sense. But the quilting community has been really essential for me. Connecting with other quilters through Instagram and other social media, really challenging myself, putting myself out there more, and really connecting with people all over the world has been really amazing. And it's something that I don't think I would have been as intentional with in the pre-COVID times.
Hmm. Yeah. So tell us about what did you learn about yourself with this quilt, and like having the quilt maker, like the testers, and going through all the technology, even like the technology of actually writing a pattern. Like me, I know all about that. That's not the easiest task. And so tell what you learned about yourself.
Yeah. So I do not have a background in graphic design at all, but I
Mhm.
knew I wanted to create a high quality pattern.
Yeah.
And before releasing Connector the previous year in 2019, I had written some very basic, simple patterns and I had used Microsoft Word to put them together. And I just really wasn't happy with that level of like graphic design work. So I learned some new programs and it was not easy. I currently use the Affinity Suite, which is
Okay.
similar to InDesign
Uh-huh.
and the Adobe products, but it's cheaper. So
Ah.
I I Googled my way through doing it.
Oh my goodness.
Um,
I love that. You Googled your way through.
Literally just everything that I was like, how do I change the color to I definitely learned the hard way. Looking back now, I realized that there are classes that I could have taken virtually. Um, I just Googled everything until I figured it out. And I had some help along the way, of course, as well, with Instagram, of course. The community is phenomenal, and the quilt pattern designer community is amazing. So I created the first rough draft of the pattern and sent it to a handful of people, a few of them existing pattern designers. And one of them pointed out that I had way too many seams. And she was like, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but you could make it have way fewer seams if you did this, this, and this. And at first I was like, that's too much work. I don't want to do that. But then I slept on it. I realized that it would be a better pattern if I just redo the math and make it so that there are fewer seams, because it's easier to make with the fewer seams. And so getting the perspective of another pattern designer was really helpful for me, especially for my first design, because now here I am, I'm currently working on designing my seventh pattern, and I'm already noticing those things
Oh,
for
wow.
myself
Yes.
before I send it out to people.
Yeah. Yeah. So isn't that interesting? Because your first reaction was like, don't tell me how to do it, or you think you're just this. And then when you were able to just settle down and be like, actually, you could be a little bit more objective, and then
Mhm.
either was actually really beneficial.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what's your favorite thing about the quilting community?
That I get to be friends with people all over the world.
Mm.
A little backstory is
Yeah.
I grew up in a military home. My parents were both in the Air Force. So we moved around a ton, and they've always had friends all over the world.
Mm.
Um, when I was in college, we went on a trip to Alaska, and my parents got to hang out with some of their longtime friends. There are other instances as well where I've just grown up watching them have these long friendships with people that like were not their next door neighbor. And you
Mhm.
have to be so much more intentional for that. But I find like the relationships are so much more deep.
Mhm. Yeah. So what has been your favorite way to connect with people online?
I'm getting more and more into video. So of course like going on Instagram stories, but
Mhm.
oftentimes that can really feel like you're talking to a phone,
Yeah.
talking into the void.
Yeah,
I like to
it's kind of
compare it to
strange
like,
talking to myself. I'm like, but I know that people are listening.
yes. It can feel like you're like walking into a room and just saying something, and you
Mhm.
don't really know if you have anyone's attention,
Mhm.
and it can be awkward. So one thing that I do with some of my closest friends is we use an app called Marco Polo, and
Love Marco Polo.
yes, so it's like texting, but instead of just typing words,
Yeah.
you can actually talk to people, but they don't have to be available at that moment. So they can go back and watch it when they have time. And that's worked out really well for me and my quilting friends.
Yeah, Marco Polo is so much fun. So that's actually one of the ways I connect with my clients. So when they're in a crisis or whatever, if they want to share something, then they do that. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Emily. So tell us how we can get a hold of you and your beautiful patterns.
So my patterns like this one and all my others are all for sale on my website, homemadeemilyjane.com. And then you can also find me on all the social platforms at Homemade Emily Jane, and also, of course, on YouTube at Homemade Emily Jane as well.
Awesome. And what would you say your level of patterns? Do you have a variety of patterns for different skill sets or?
Most of them are like confident beginner or more intermediate, but I don't have anything like super advanced or really difficult.
And do you have any like paper piecing or is it all just traditional?
It's all traditional piecing, quarter-inch seams on the sewing machine, but a few of the patterns do have alternate instructions for cutting with AccuQuilt. So I
Oh,
use an AccuQuilt die cut machine quite a bit. I'm obsessed with mine, and I know some other people are too. So the patterns that are like easy to cut out most of the pieces with AccuQuilt, I'll include a couple extra pages at the end to
okay.
share those instructions.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. All right. And then people can just share. So you said you're on your seventh pattern that you're
I'm working on it now. I haven't posted it anywhere, but my tentative release date is early April.
okay. So we can look out for that. So you have 6 patterns that are available on your website.
Yes.
And so what I'm hearing is you love connecting with quilters.
Yes.
Love having friendships from all over. And it seems to me like you took the lemon of COVID and really created something that you probably wouldn't have. Do you think it was that you wouldn't have created it, or it just wouldn't have been as quickly?
I think it would have been a lot slower.
Hmm.
Um, and who knows? I mean, I think I would have at least released one pattern, but it's become so much more than I thought it would.
Hmm. And the feedback, obviously, from people as they're buying your pattern and creating your pattern, that's just like expending so much more joy in the world than there had been before.
It's amazing. It's so amazing.
So fun. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us this like sliver of happiness and sunshine, because really when we think about how resilient we really are as humans, it is incredible to think like you are a pattern designer and you created all of this. So thanks so much for inspiring us, Emily, and we will can go on Instagram, connect with you, your YouTube channel, your email, sorry, your website at homemadeemilyjane.com. All right. Thanks.
Yes. Thank
Care.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.